deity which was regarded as a leader of the foreigners, or somehow associated with the foreigners that came to Chichén Itzá.
For decades, the fall of the Maya was taught as a peaceful mystery, a civilization that simply walked away from its cities. But near the end of his life, the archaeologist who built that story began to doubt it.
All of the stone would be covered in stucco. It would be brightly painted, red, green, blue, yellow, so that it would have looked fantastic.
What he uncovered suggested the collapse wasn't graceful at all, and that the same forces might still be at work today. The shadow of Chichén Itzá. By the 1920s, Sylvanus Morley was the face of American archaeology. To the public, he was a tireless scholar in a fedora, meticulously documenting the hieroglyphs of Chichén Itzá and the Great Ball Court. He was the man who convinced the Carnegie Institution to pour millions into the Yucatecan jungle, turning overgrown mounds of limestone back into towering monuments. Morley's version of the Maya was poetic. He described them as the Greeks of the New World, a peaceful, intellectual society of astronomers and mathematicians who spent their nights tracking the movements of Venus and their days building cities in perfect harmony with nature. In Morley's textbooks, the sudden abandonment of these cities around 900 AD was a romantic mystery. He proposed that the Maya simply grew tired of their environment and migrated north to start anew. This theory, known as the Old Empire transition, allowed the world to view the Maya as a mystical, almost supernatural people who transcended the messy violence of European history. But even as he published these theories, Morley was haunted by the physical evidence he saw on the ground. The deeper he dug, the more he encountered scorched earth and defensive walls that did not fit the narrative of a peaceful utopia. The tension between the scholar's public words and his private observations grew as he aged. He began to realize that the mystery of the Maya collapse was not a mystery at all. It was a consequence. He had seen the same patterns emerging in the modern world during his travels, patterns of resource depletion and political deception. Before he passed away at the age of 65, Morley's private journals and final letters suggested a much grimmer reality. He understood that the Maya had not simply walked away from their cities. They had burned them to the ground from the inside out. The archaeologist in the suit. To understand Morley's final admission, one must look at the secret life he led during World War I. While he was ostensibly in Central America to find ruins, he was actually operating as Agent 56 for the U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence. Alongside fellow archaeologists like Herbert Spinden, Morley mapped every inlet and cove from Mexico to Costa Rica. His mission was to locate hidden German submarine bases that might threaten American shipping lanes. He was a master of deception, using his scholarly reputation as a perfect cover to move through restricted territories without suspicion. This period of espionage fundamentally changed how Morley viewed human organization. He spent years analyzing how small groups of people could hide massive infrastructure under the canopy of the jungle. He watched how local governments in Central America rose and fell through corruption and the control of limited resources. As a spy, he was trained to look for the signature of a civilization's logistics. He realized that no city exists in a vacuum. Every pyramid, every temple, and every plaza required a massive supply chain of food, water, and fuel. When the war ended and he returned to full-time archaeology, he began applying this intelligence mindset to the ancient Maya. He stopped looking at the temples as mere art and started looking at them as the result of industrial-scale labor. He began to calculate the cost of the Maya civilization. If the modern world was currently tearing itself apart over coal and steel, what had the Maya fought over? The answer was hidden in the very plaster that made their cities shine white in the sun. The plaster apocalypse. The most visceral part of Morley's late career realization involved the use of lime plaster. To the tourists who visited Chichén Itzá, the gray stone ruins looked ancient and natural. But in their prime, these cities were garish and blindingly bright, coated in thick layers of smooth white plaster and painted in vibrant reds and blues. Morley knew that producing this plaster required an environmental sacrifice that modern science is only now fully quantifying. To create lime plaster, limestone must be heated to over 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit in massive kilns. The only fuel available to the Maya was wood. Factual estimates suggest that to produce enough plaster for a single large temple, the Maya had to clear-cut and burn approximately 20 acres of virgin rainforest. Multiply this by the thousands of structures found in a city like Tikal or Karakol, and the environmental impact is staggering. As Morley surveyed the vast Maya lowlands, he realized he wasn't looking at a jungle that had always been there. He was looking at a landscape that had been stripped bare for centuries. The deforestation led to a cascading catastrophe that Morley began to document in his final years. Without the tree canopy, the local temperature rose, and the soil lost its ability to hold moisture. The Maya, who relied on seasonal rains captured in massive reservoirs, found themselves in a self-inflicted drought. This wasn't a mystical departure, it was an ecological bankruptcy. The very thing that made their cities beautiful, the gleaming white plaster, was the very thing that ensured their starvation. Morley saw the irony in this, noting that the more the Maya elites tried to project power through architecture, the faster they accelerated their own demise. The fortress cities. The second pillar of Morley's last secret was the reality of Maya warfare. For most of his career, he had minimized the presence of fortifications, preferring to see the Maya as a collection of city-states united by culture. However, the evidence of violence was undeniable. In the Petex Batun region, archaeologists later found exactly what Morley had feared: cities where the inhabitants had literally ripped the stone off their own temples to build desperate, concentric defensive walls. The peaceful Maya myth was a convenient fiction that Morley had helped maintain to secure funding and public interest. But the truth he saw in the dirt was one of perpetual war. As resources like water and fertile land became scarce due to deforestation, the city-states turned on one another. It was a zero-sum game. The inscriptions on the stelae, which Morley spent his life deciphering, were not just calendars, they were war trophies. They recorded the capture, torture, and sacrifice of rival kings in gruesome detail. This shift in perspective transformed the collapse into a horrific period of social disintegration. The cities didn't just fade away. The peasants, who were doing the back-breaking work of clearing forests and building temples for a ruling class that could no longer provide water or protection, eventually revolted. Morley realized that the Maya civilization didn't end because of an outside invader. It ended because the social contract was incinerated by the elite's obsession with grandiosity in the face of a dying environment. The final admission. In the final months of his life, Sylvanus Morley's tone changed. In his earlier works, he spoke of the Maya as a separate, distant species of humanity. But his experiences as a WWI spy and his decades in the field led him to a singular, disturbing conclusion. The Maya were exactly like us. They were a sophisticated, technologically advanced society that believed they were too big to fail. They thought their gods, their calendars, and their engineering could bypass the basic laws of biology and physics. His admission was a warning to the post-World War II world. He had seen the ruins of the Maya, and he had seen the ruins of Europe after the Great War. He understood that the distance between a thriving metropolis and a silent heap of stones is much shorter than we care to admit. He began to speak of the Maya not as a mystery to be solved, but as a lesson to be learned. He realized that the truth about the Sumerians, the Maya, and every other fallen giant was the same. When a civilization loses its connection to the resources that sustain it, no amount of prayer or propaganda can save it. Morley's work at Chichén Itzá remains legendary, but his true legacy is the shift toward settlement archaeology, the study of how regular people lived and died, rather than just how kings built monuments. He opened the door for modern LiDAR technology to reveal the tens of thousands of hidden structures that proved the Maya were an industrial-scale society. He knew that the jungle was not reclaiming the ruins, it was hiding a crime scene. The warning. Sylvanus Morley died in Santa Fe, New Mexico, far from the humid jungles of the Yucatan. He left behind a world that was rapidly entering the atomic age, a new era of potential self-destruction. His final secret was a simple, haunting observation. A civilization is only as strong as its environment and its honesty. Once you burn your forests and lie to your people about the coming drought, the end is already written in the stone. We look at the Maya and wonder what happened, but Morley would tell us to look at ourselves. The ruins of the future are being built today. If you found this investigation into Morley's secret warnings valuable, subscribe for more deep dives into the suppressed history of our world. What do you believe truly ended the Maya? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Join us next time as we uncover more.